What's up, team? So Sean from Invest to Live here, and we got a pretty cool little opening to the day today from my boy Amit, who dropped some information about what he's been working on behind the scenes, something he's been grinding on, and I'll be honest with you, it's pretty exciting to actually check it out and see what he had going on. So first things I want to say, thanks for being here. Appreciate that, of course, as always. And the bigger thing really is that as part of this sort of Palantir community that's been growing and expanding, KX, what's happening, man? I think I think a big part of this has been the way people are engaging with it, learning about it. But more than that, what I think is really, really cool and something that's a big deal is the way that we're applying education to the way we're doing due diligence, the way we're thinking about where we're investing and what we're investing in. And that's actually like that's great. I mean, that's amazing. So it's like I think I want to just call that out again that one of the biggest things we're seeing is that the tradition of jumping into stocks without doing our research or not knowing where we're going to target or whatever else the case might be. I think it's a really interesting thing, excuse me, to see that regular everyday investors are starting to spend the time to not only learn about the typical financials, they're not just spending the time to learn about what the company does, but like what we're seeing is people within the community are gathering information, they're sharing it, they're sharing perspectives on it. Now, one thing I want to call out is you should never take someone's advice on a stock, right? Use it as part of the advice, part of what you're dropping. Use it as part of your go-to-market for how you do due diligence. And with that said, that's one of the reasons I typically don't make recommendations on stocks. I like to talk about the companies, I talk about what they do, their technology, etc. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think that the key here is we need to find folks who understand the products, understand the technologies, and can give true real-world thoughts on it. I think that that's the key here is how we aggregate the data is one thing. How we understand what's actually happening from a company perspective is even bigger. So without further ado, I'm going to try to share my screen here because this is a brand new thing for me. So let's see if I can figure out just what the heck I'm doing here. Let me see. Let me see. This is what I get for trying to figure out how to do this live, right? Let me see. Okay, cool. I don't know why that's not working. That's pretty funny, I gotta admit. Let me just see if I can make that work for you, team. All right. I know what I did wrong here. So give me one more second while I open up this screen. And while I'm doing that, I just want to call it out again. I think it is pretty interesting to see someone like Amit doing this because here we go. Okay. Because we see this in the Tesla community, but what we don't get to see is it in this community, which is going to be really interesting. So let me just try this one more time. And hopefully you guys can tell me if I'm doing it right. Let me see. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to click share screen. I'm going to open it up. Let me see. Well, this is going to be a pretty crappy live stream if I can't get this thing to run. Geez, you know what? Hey, Amit, if you're watching, man, I've seen you share a bunch of times on your screen. I'm trying to get another tab to screen to show up on my screen here, but it doesn't seem to want to work. Any thoughts here? Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty crappy ending in a very quick video. Wow, I mean, that's obvious. That's where the Duncan is, man. Yep, hit screen share. Yeah, so it's funny. It's not letting me share it. That's part of the issue here. Doesn't seem like it wants to pop up. Let me see. You know, it's funny. I share my screen all day long. Literally, I just hung up from something where I was sharing my screen. 1 second. There we go. Oh, I just figured out why. The browser blocked the screen. So that explains that. Let's see if we can fix this live here. Otherwise, it's pretty crappy. Give me 1 more second, guys. Okay. Amit, I'm going to hit you up in a second here. Give me 1 minute. Okay. Sorry, team, for the technical difficulties. We got to bring in someone who knows what they're doing here to specialize in this. This is typical of my life here. Looks like part of the problem is my screen is blocking.
Yo.
Oh, there he is. All right. Well, I mean, why not bring you in if anyone else is going to be talking about this today? So what's up, Amit? How you doing, man?
What's up? I'm trying to see. So if I share screen, so when you see Chrome tab, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you click on the website, it just gets blocked.
Yeah, it's funny. It's coming up with, it says literally, this website's been blocked from sharing the screen.
So let me share my screen right now. You can see this, right?
Not seeing anything.
Share this tab to screen, StreamYard.
Oh, there we go. Hey-oh, there we go. All right, so I'm going to actually let you do this thing justice, man, because this is the best way to do it. So I was excited to drop it.
Imagine this is your stream. I'm in the background. If you have questions, I'll answer it. But
yeah, well, so basically, here's the deal, right? We had been talking about Palantir for a long time here as a company, as what they do, what they're working on. And, you know, there was this conversation started a few weeks back about, like, why doesn't Palantir and the people who are into this have their own place they can go to get the updates, follow what's happening, get the news they need? And I think a lot of people were deferring to, like, I think we know the guy. I think we know the right guy to jump on here. So actually, it looks like I've got the right guy on here. I'm pretty excited to say that. So Amit, I know you weren't going to be jumping on here today. So as usual, super special guest. And I love that you're sharing your screen for me and helping me out here. I don't want to do this justice in the way that I see it. I want to hear the way you see it. I know you talked about this morning, but would you mind taking a minute and talking about why you did this and what the drive is behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got time for like the next 40 minutes because I don't have to leave for like another hour, so I'm good if you want to talk. Yeah, no, I think the whole idea was, so it was mentioned a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. Someone just mentioned, hey, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a resource for shareholders and potential investors and people to just get information around it? And literally, someone tweeted on a Monday or Tuesday. I was driving to work when I saw the tweet, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And then as soon as I get to work, I open up the laptop and I just buy the $140 Wix hosting package because I'm like I get so obsessed with it. I'm like it instantly clicked. I was like, there's a ton of YouTube content, but YouTube is YouTube, and you know what you get on YouTube. Someone like you that should have like 100,000 subscribers, just in terms of the quality of content you put out, it's algorithmically based, and like that's just the nature of the platform. Even though you know people have good content, and then Reddits can get very toxic. People can talk in different ways. Twitter is Twitter, but Twitter has a lot of noise. So it's like, yeah, it made sense to me immediately. I was like, if there was just a website that people knew in the back of their head, okay, I'm a Palantir shareholder, or I'm interested in Palantir, this website is the website to go to get information that is not going to be biased, that's going to be objective, that's going to have a good understanding, that's going to answer a lot of FAQs that I can send to other people. Instead of sending them this video of this guy talking, I can just send them an article so they can read it. You know, it seemed like a no-brainer. So at that point, I was like, well, if we are on what I believe is a rocket ship, but the rocket ship has not really taken off yet. It took off in February 2021 on an immature path, and now it's back to normal, and now it's going to have a slow and steady rise to the top. Then that means there's going to be more interest over Palantir over time, especially with the cult-like following that it's starting to develop. So if there could be a resource for that, then that would be dope.
You know, one thing I want to call out too that's actually pretty exciting about the way you're doing this is, and I mean, I guess a lot of people probably don't know this about me. I know you do, but I actually do invest in a lot of startups. I invest in companies in a lot of different areas. I primarily look at AI, but I had been seed investment in one of Jason Kalinakis' company called Inside.com, and one of the reasons I liked that particular company was they were aggregating information that a human being was looking at, right? Not just driving tons of information at me, but like things that actually made sense presented in one place where I could find it. And as there was a conversation going about you launching this and why you're doing it and the reasons you were doing it, I was just thinking, like, this is such a perfect example of why you want to pull it together. And what the purpose of doing this is it's really just a location where we have someone who's putting the time, the effort, the background to actually look at this, read the articles, post them in a thoughtful way, make sure they make sense. They're not fluff or written by someone just trying to make a nickel on an article. But then also sort of giving people, excuse me, the chance to learn more here, right? Like, I'll be honest with you, when I clicked on the page you're looking at right now, I sort of had a moment of like, man, I've been looking at this thing for a while. I've been looking at this thing for over a decade. And there were names on here that didn't come to mind right away. And I said, geez, I want to now look into each of these and see what they mean. So I think there's something big here. And I think the way you're doing this is going to be really helpful to the community as well. And I know I had heard you mention earlier that, like, there's no ads on this or anything like that. Let me be the first to say, I think you absolutely should consider how you can monetize this without having to cost anyone anything, because you're doing a big thing for the community here. And again, one thing I want to call out, because I think we've talked about this and I heard you say it this morning as well, is this isn't about whether you should buy it or sell it or short it or go long on it. This is literally a place for aggregating real-time news in a centralized location, segmented into a format that's very optimized and easy to understand and work with. Sounds like I'm describing AI, but I realized I just described you, actually. So I think it's really interesting to see the way you're doing this. And, of course, it doesn't hurt that I get to see my face on here too, which is always helpful with my awkward giant mouth open picture. But
I love this
there's that handsome devil.
You look like you have a baby face in this picture. Like, there's something about this. It's just cute. Like, it's just cute. And you have the teal color shirt.
Well, that was also pre-haircut, so I was going a little long there. But yeah, man, I think this is really exciting, and it's one of those things where it speaks to sort of the maturity of what's happening here. I think there's a lot of noise in the markets. And the problem is, the way that I typically do my research is I check out sites. I go to a couple of different places, like maybe Seeking Alpha, maybe Yahoo Finance, to see if there's something on there. I check on some videos on YouTube, try to follow different Twitter handles, try to get it and aggregate it. I really think this is an interesting point that a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from. So I want to be the first to say, like, I think the community in general really appreciates you and what you're doing here at scale. And then even like, as we were just since this morning, you posting this and making the notification about what's coming down the pipeline, you have literally already found more things to add that was technically public, but not really known. So, like, how are you finding this information? What's your process, Amit, for how you're adding here and adding value?
Yeah, so a couple things before I answer that. Number one, in terms of monetization, I do think the website will have ads one day. I just don't think the traffic is up there yet to justify giving people the experience with ads. But like, yeah, eventually, I think that's a perfect way to keep it free and for people to access it. So that's definitely in the future. Number two, you made a point about like someone who has the work ethic to do it, and I think that's the big thing here. It's like, I'm not getting paid for this, but as I mentioned in the live stream today, I'm just so damn passionate about building things. And obviously, you know that, John, from our conversation. So to me, I see the potential of something, and you see the potential and you see the right timing. Like, if I did this in February 2021, it would be all off hype. And then you would have an 80% decline and the website would have no legitimacy, So it's like, now it's like, well, we've been through the crash. We've been through all the meme stuff. Now it's like the company's putting out news on a daily, which, going back to your point about the SPACs, that was the biggest convincer for me. Like if I was 99%, that was the other 1%. Because at some level, this is a media company, right? And a media company needs to create media. So you either fluff the news in order to force the media, or you actually report the news to force the media. And over the past 4 months, it's been a case study of like, well, does Palantir actually have the level of news at this moment in 2022 to be able to meaningfully report it? Because if not, you're going to have clickbait articles because you got to get clicks. It's easy to get clicks when there's news to get people to click on it. And I was like, wait a second, they're investing in like 18 other companies. And all of the companies and the trajectories of those companies have a actual impact on Palantir, whether it's product partnerships with SPACs like Wejo, or whether it's bad stuff happening to some of their SPACs, like being investigated for fraud. I mean, these are all things that are interesting at the end of the day and impact this, unique strategic initiative by Palantir. So that's why I was like, I think there's a lot of news ultimately to report. And then following up on your point, how do I find information? Literally last night, I got a DM from someone on Twitter saying, hey, I want to stay anonymous. I saw your video on the Palantir working with the Lithuanian government. If you Google Ukraine Palantir homes for refugees, you will find this website right here. And if you Command F Palantir, and this is what they told me in the DM, you will find this statement: the let me share this tab instead. Here we go. The DLUHC and the Home Office have appointed a third-party company, Palantir, so it's not speculation, it's just right there on the official gov.uk website, to assist with a coalition analysis and support relating to the expressions of interest for potential sponsors in the refugee crisis that the UK is trying to find a home for Ukrainian citizens. And then it's like, wait a second, this is news. So I wrote this article literally after the live stream. It took me 20 minutes to write this article. And it's kind of like poetic, because it's like, well, he launches a website. He says he's going to be breaking news. 10 minutes later, he broke some news. And now it's there. And now the information's out there for everyone. And this got 249 views in the past 20 minutes.
So one thing I want to call it too, first of all, just got a great question, right? Is this actually up and published, and can people start checking it out?
Yeah, dailypalantir.com. It's up.
Very cool. And that's where I was this morning, actually reading everything on it. So one thing that you called out too that is particularly interesting is the ability to search your site. This is sometimes the struggle when you Google something like Palantir News and you have articles from 15 different sources. Some of it's on Twitter, some on YouTube, some on different types of social media. It's very hard to find specific things that maybe you're looking for as part of your research. So myself, as an example, I like to go very, very deep into a company's books, their numbers. I want to understand, things like CAGR, NRR, how they're growing, how they're acquiring customers. So it's very tough for me to pull that together when I have to check IR websites against Yahoo websites, against whatever. So that's a really great benefit too that a lot of folks don't think about initially, is by having an aggregated source of news in text format, I can do things like search with Control F and really find those words, the key things I'm looking for. So one thing I'd be interested to learn as well, are you planning to do something like posting their live streams, posting their earnings reports? Are those things you'd would consider to put on here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could think of it as a Palantir media company, or a media company built off of Palantir.
Cool.
And that means that, and this does not work if the company either does not execute against its thesis, or there's not enough interest in the company. I mean, it's the brutal reality of the media business, as you know. If people don't care, they're not going to care. And it's taking a big risk. And it is a big, people might think Palantir is like going to be amazing, and like we think that, but you never know. And it's like, if people just aren't interested in anymore, this website's a dud. So I believe part of the job of the website is to create the media that gets people interested, but the creation of the media can only happen if the company is interesting. So there's a symbiotic relationship there, but live streams, earnings, all that stuff, I think that'll be a central source for people to get accurate information.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think we've talked about this before. We talk about it all on our own channels. And even like a question we have, right, is like, do we see upside in the business, et cetera? I think that's what this is all driving towards is, when we think about what's happening in here, it's easy to just look at stock price and just at the numbers. But when we look at all the different things they're working on, the different articles that come out, the news that we're putting together, the things that are being shared about them, et cetera, I think that this is where having one place to find it for me personally is going to be a good spot. And I think the parallels, by the way, too, of the way Tesla's been doing this, and they have folks in the community who have dedicated responses to what they're working on, what they're building, how they're deploying. I think this is very much a parallel to that. And again, sort of like a bravo to you, man, for really taking the effort here to put the work into this. Because frankly, let's be honest, it's a lot easier to make a video for 30 minutes
on
YouTube by a mile than it is to build out a website, connect content, and update it on a regular basis. So, and you're doing it for free, by the way. So for what it's worth. And I want to call this out too, just for everyone who's watching. I mean, I got asked this question the other day. And I want you to say it like live on camera. You do not work for Palantir, correct?
No.
You're not affiliated with them. You're not being paid by them.
No. I think they definitely know who I am, though. So a couple things. Number one, so I tweet this today. This tweet has like 300 retweets, or it's like 150 not 150 retweets, 150 likes, about like 50 retweets. It would blow my mind in the world that Palantir social media people are in that they don't see this. Like, there's just no way, in my opinion. So the question is, when they see this, and I've been trying to psychoanalyze this, like, I think, first of all, they think it's a good thing because there's free media being created for them where they don't have to do the work. So it's like, okay, that's number one. Number two, they might be a little bit scared because what if I report some news that looks bad on the company and the website has 1 million viewers one day, right? And like that news comes out. But I think that risk is mitigated because it's like Seeking Alpha would do the same. So it's like bad news is going to be bad news at the end of the day.
Yep.
Number three, and here's the big question. Sean. By the way, I just tweeted that I'm live with you right now. So hopefully we get some more people in over the next couple minutes. Here's the question. Is Palantir going to embrace this type of platform? Because with Elon, he has. Gali from Hyperchange, random 20-year-old, got to ask him a question at a shareholder meeting when retail investors were never allowed to do this. So Elon, he's tweeting with people, interacting with people. He retweets these blogs all the time. He's about to do an interview with Dave Lee and Rob Maurer. Like, he's like, look, this is a cult-like stock. We don't get a 20x return in 1 year in a world in which there's a pandemic unless I have this following. So he plays to that crowd. Karp cannot do that because he works for the government. He cannot be on Twitter saying like it's not going to happen for Palantir. So it's a question of if their social team is going to embrace a platform like this, and I'll be excited to see if it's going to happen. I'm skeptical, but I don't work for them, and if I did work for them, they would never allow me to put this much of my content out there. So we'll see if they care about the website.
Yeah, it's interesting too because your call out on something like a Seeking Alpha as an example. Like it's not that you can't include those kind of things in here and those opinions and those articles, and I'm sure there's a way to do that. But to your point, like there's sort of like this. Actually, you know what? Let's even change that question a little bit. You and I have had a really good discussion recently around like things like RSS feeds and why they don't help you to discover the real content you're looking for. Oftentimes, would you mind touching on that a little bit in regards to this right here? If I'm just following Palantir on Google, it's just throwing tons of stuff at me. There's no curation. What's your thoughts on that as far as how you're approaching it?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the magic in today's society because content is a commodity. Content is everywhere. So like our YouTube channels are supposed to be a curation of all the thoughts that we have. The problem is our YouTube channels are inside of a platform that gets 2 billion monthly active users per month, which is great because that means there's an audience for us to access. But the problem is when accessing that audience in an engine of recommendations, our content is with other content, which means we have to do weird things like compete for clips or look like a baby in the thumbnail so that maybe people will click on it, all that stuff. So it's a little bit harder to do that. So if you just follow Palantir on YouTube or follow Palantir on Google, you're going to get just recommendations that the company are betting that you're going to click on because they can sell ads against it, and that's the entire monetary incentive. And then hopefully you discover that content. Whereas when you have something like a New York Times, which uses Google to get traffic, but is not using Google in the sense of it needs Google to literally recommend it against another piece of content because the New York Times is a media company. They have their own newsletters. They have their own email list. They have their own subscribers. They have their own assets of audiences that if YouTube went away tomorrow or Google went away, it would obviously hurt them, but it wouldn't necessarily destroy them. It would destroy a lot of other media companies, but not someone like the New York Times. So Palantir Daily or Daily Palantir is this idea of a centralized source where users don't go to YouTube to search Palantir. They would go to dailypalantir.com, which is a big thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of competition to get people to switch their attention span there. But if you're targeting a very specific niche, which we've seen with things like Teslarati, then and you've built trust and authority in that niche with whatever you've created, then people will do that switch and they'll get better accurate information.
Cool. And, I want to call something out here too. Like it was mentioned a few times and Blue Giraffe also just mentioned here, I'm going to throw this up here that, retail investors have been praised by the due diligence here. And I want to call this out too, that this is a really big thing because the traditions of investing have been waiting and relying on Wall Street to tell us what to do and analysts to tell us what they think. We never really know what or why they're doing. We don't really understand necessarily why one person thinks one thing. And our approaches to the way we invest are very different. If everything you do is based on what you're being told from an analyst, well, an analyst has sometimes a short-term view. Maybe they're looking at what they expected month over month or quarter to quarter. Someone like myself, I'm investing for my kids' college. I'm investing for my retirement. I don't have a view of 6 months out. I have a view of 6 years out. So when I build a thesis, I need as much information as possible. I need really deep information too, for that matter, by the way, because what I want to do at scale for myself is I really want to be able to look out and say, where will this be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And for anyone who's new here, that's what I was doing over 10 years ago when I first got into Palantir, by the way, as I was looking 10 years, 15 years out. What is the complexity of data? How much new data is being created? And then the question becomes, great, now I have 10 years of historical data. I own a company, right? I've got 10 years of historical data. What do I do with it? What are the trends? Once I understand what it's looked like, I can get my arms around what has happened. Now it turns into what is happening today and how do I then action on it? The way you action on that data is by aggregating it into the same format where it becomes understandable, pushing up through dashboards, reports, etc., becoming more intelligent around the likely outcomes. We oftentimes talk about things that are very basic in finance, like time series forecasting, probabilities of range around earnings. What if you could do that with your sales, with your hiring, with the marketplaces, with all different types of, companies that are out there? And this is why we get a lot of questions, I think, that are along the lines of, will we hit $1 trillion in market cap? Do we see $100 price target? Listen, I don't know. What I know is that we have a trajectory that is known of the growth of data. Like we're talking insane amounts of daily data being driven all the time from everywhere. And now more than ever, we're seeing in traditional databases, we're seeing data lakes, we're seeing structured data, unstructured data, we're seeing social media data, we're seeing everything. And if an analyst is still looking at everything just simply from their financials, sometimes you miss the boat. And you, if you follow analysts, not to say that they're all bad or good, it's indifferent, right? It's a neutral thing. But that's just one voice, and a voice of many has to drive how you look at these things. I think what I also want to understand too at scale is your numbers. So myself as a person who does due diligence, I'm actually really interested, Amit, to see the numbers you pump out from Daily Palantir, right? I want to know, are you getting lots of views? How often are people checking in? And that's going to help me to start to do a baseline of my investing. So there's a really, this wasn't the purpose of what I was planning to talk about today, but I think this is a great topic because of what you're doing here. There are those of us, myself included, who do what's known as like social media arbitrage in and around brands and stocks. And for anyone who's listening, if you don't know what that means, what we're looking to do is identify trends long before Wall Street or an analyst even has a chance to pick up on the trend so that we can get in as early as possible. This requires at times risk, which means sometimes hedging, right? But I'll give you a perfect example.
Is it the example I know?
You already know what I'm going to say, right?
I can't wait to hear it. I'm going to post this on my channel, by the way. So I'm going to take this.
Yeah, for sure. And it has to do with my Dunks cup here.
I love this. Go ahead. Go for it.
So listen, I'm 39 years old. I've got a white and gray beard. Okay. So I've been around the block. I was sitting in a Dunkin' Donuts a couple years back, maybe a year and a half back, 2 years, who knows, right? And I'm looking at this like screen above me of this young girl, probably late teens, holding a Dunks brand of a type of coffee I've never seen before, like cold foam and all this crazy stuff. And I said to myself, like, wow, I have no idea why they're advertising with that person holding that drink. And I kid you not, as we talked about the other day, 3 young kids in front of me, all 3 ordered that drink. So I get up to line. I say to the kid behind the counter, say, hey, who is that? And they say, oh, that's Charlie from TikTok. I have no idea what that means, of course, right? I'm not on TikTok. I don't know what Charlie is. I start looking into it, and I realize Dunks is now connected their brand with an age group that has had absolutely no access to Dunkin' Donuts advertising at scale, none. And the Dunkin's model, based on stores that have predictable revenue and predictable investment, makes it very easy for me to scale out a thesis of what I think they can see for growth and CAGR. So
that's a good point about the predictable revenue of a Dunk, because if you know how many people come in per day, yeah.
Well, this is the Starbucks thesis, right? If I know exactly what the margins are by store, I can easily calculate it by the number of stores per year growth, and then overall 10-year growth plans for the company. And it's almost like what the company is going to be worth 10 years ahead of time. It's very predictable. This was a case where Dunks was still public. I went like, and I gotta pump this up on the screen. This is what happens when you're 39 years old and you say what Charlie is. I hear Charlie, I think Tiger Blood, right? If anyone knows what that means. But long story short, so I end up coming home. I look into it and I'm like, wow, this thing feels really undervalued. And I feel like they have an audience now of someone with, listen, someone can tell me in the chat here, but tens of millions of followers.
She has 135 million followers.
135 million. Okay, well said, right?
Not tens of millions, it's hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions of followers who all she needed to do was hold a coffee and say, this is the one I like. And instantly, kids are going out and buying these. And I think these are the same kids that, in my opinion, were going into Starbucks to buy those drinks, are now sitting here. So what I start doing is, exactly, Mr. Sheen, you got it with the Tiger Blood, Drew. What I started doing was I started asking people in Dunkin' Donuts. I will literally drive around to 15, 20 different of them, right, in a day and say, hey, how many people are coming in and ordering that drink? What's the age group that's ordering that drink? And over time, enough of a baseline of thesis gets created where I can say to myself, this is going to be big. And it's going to drive bottom line and top line revenue growth, in my opinion. So long story short, I take a huge position in Dunks. Obviously, I wasn't the only one who saw this coming. They were then taken public after going through the roof. So it's just a perfect example of like doubling an investment in a really short period of time by paying attention to the things that are around you from a social arbitrage perspective. This makes me think about what you're doing. And I want to be clear, neither of us are suggesting anything even close to financial advice here. But what we're talking about is due diligence. We're talking about the way you think about reporting, investigating, and understanding. When articles or a website dedicated to something like a Palantir, I'm saying that weird today, Palantir, right? Palantir, right? When they're starting to get that attention, what I think is happening is it starts to bring more of that focus into like, is retail starting to pay attention? Is retail getting bigger and deeper pockets for investing? Is retail deciding that they'd rather be in something that has a lot of growth versus something that has a lot of stability and value. And I think as we start to understand the way that the markets fluctuate, the way that they move between value and growth and risk on and risk off, there are these little pockets of opportunity, right, that jump out in strange places. It's not a question of, is the stock going to go up or down? It's a question of, do you believe, as anyone who's watching this right now, watches your channel or mine, or follows us on Twitter, it's a question of, do you believe that AI and the ability to look at data at scale is needed in the future? Right. Yes. Do you believe that there is a need for more of this to be happening in the next 5 or 10 years? I don't think there's any question. Then it comes down to, do you think this is the right team? Are they doing the right projects? Is there enough news to make a thesis? And the answer is yes. Then you as the investor can make the decision how you want to play it. I do want to call out, though, really, really important. You're getting flossy today, man. Very flossy.
I had to wear something for the announcement.
I did notice it this morning too. I wasn't going to say anything, but Drew with the call out here. And KX also, yeah, man. I don't get into TikTok, although I hear that I'm missing the boat by not being on it, frankly. So look, I won't belabor the point here. I think we're about 30 minutes in. I'm in between meetings today, and I want to get this out because I thought you did such a great job of explaining in your live feed this morning that people could probably do with another explanation of what it is and why you're doing it. And I will tell you right now, like the first thing I did was hit it on my favorites as a point that I'm going to go in and check and see what's happening. I followed your Twitter right away. And or maybe
I'll be publicly posting the traffic almost every night in a pinned tweet.
All right, cool, yeah.
Because it's not for me to keep as a secret. Investors like yourself should see. Well, there's more people checking it out naturally, organically. So
yeah, well, it's going to be one of those things where I think this quickly and easily becomes part of the due diligence we're all going to be doing, right? I mean, it's going to be great.
Do you know if if institutions looked at the retail cult before they went all in on Tesla? Like, do you have any information on how institutions do the due diligence around the retail community? Because that didn't used to happen 10 years ago, right? Institutions didn't care about retail.
100%. But what they do is it's a programmatic approach to due diligence. So what this means is they're going to put things in place to automatically track and understand. So it could be something as simple as just looking at Google Feeds. Right. Actually, I mean, I'll take you on a quick 2-minute journey here. So I don't know if you guys, I mean, if you're familiar or anyone in the chat's familiar with the guys from Dumb Money. You know who these guys are?
No.
Okay, so pretty popular channel on YouTube. They're really into like the heavy trading space. They were sort of the creators of this whole idea of social arbitrage. And then I guess this is probably as good a time as any to tell you what I was working on with Watson IBM. I was also involved in what was known as Watson Analytics for Twitter, where we were reading Twitter feeds in real time and identifying trends before they became trends, and then applying weightings. Wow. Yeah, so they were building their own for Wall Street. We were doing it. Yeah, Joel, it is a great channel. And Drew also. I love Dumb Money too. The guys are cool. The idea behind is they were building this out on their end for Wall Street to identify trends of investable assets long before anyone could possibly have seen it. That company was actually bought. And now the guys just do it on their own as like their own channel and their own thing. But I can promise you right now, Wall Street is doing this. But I got to call this out. I got to call it out because it's so important. And analysts are doing it as well. The advantage that you, myself, and everyone who's watching this have is we are not trying to spin around an oil tanker. We're in a jet ski, right? We can bang a left on a dime. I mean, I'd probably fall off that thing and break my back, but like you certainly could spin around on a dime and bang it out. I don't know what's so funny about that. I mean, I don't know what you're laughing about, but like it's true. Like by the time they release their analysis, by the time the company then releases their opinions, by the time they have actionability on it, that's why we do social arbitrage, to get in really quick before they do. That's a great point as well. I want to call this out here. A lot of good stuff in the comments, by the way, team. I appreciate it. You know, they also have things that they have to release in a certain type of way to make sure it's compliant with their role, for good reason, by the way, right? This is for good reason. But when we look at this as just another area of due diligence for ourselves, it's a really great way to do it. Like, I know we're off the topic slightly here, but like I actually do ask questions because I work in the AI space full time and I work with deep learning, neural networks, the whole shebang. Like, there is a lot of things that become really interesting when you understand that your due diligence is 24/7 if you're taking this serious. So I will ask companies where I go, or even like I said with Dunkin' Donuts, I'll ask them. Actually, I do this all the time. To be honest with you, I'll go into Starbucks and say, hey, how many customers do you think you did today? Is this a busy day compared to the day before? Is this a busy week? What's your busiest time of the year? I do this at restaurants, I do this at retail places. I do this everywhere I go. And I think that this just has become, over the past 20 years of being an investor, what I'm on is a constant exercise of how to gather data and then analyze that data in a way that works for me based on the way I look at it. So That's why personally, I think, you're someone I consider a friend, someone who I think is doing great things, someone who I want to see do even bigger things. And we're going to keep talking about that. But what I really appreciate is you taking the time of your life, which is already busy as hell, as I know, and aggregating this into one place where I think a lot of people are going to get value from it. And so if nothing else, I think the takeaway today, full stop, is you're providing a free, really valuable resource. And I would encourage every single person who sees this and watches it and sees it on Twitter, like, do yourself a service and go and check out this site, check out the Twitter handle. And yeah, right. Like, let's call a spade here. Let's get you to the moon, man. I can't believe you don't have 1 million subs on YouTube for the value you're dropping, by the way. But I think I'm social arbing you, man. If I could invest in your YouTube channel, I'd be seed money #1, just so you know. So let's figure out a way to do that too.
Yeah, man. So I'll say a final couple things, and then we could head out. I think in we mentioned mandates and like certain proper disclosures and stuff like that. So I'm not a financial analyst. I don't have those sort of regulatory concerns on me. What I do have is free speech, and that's the beauty of living in America. So the nature of free speech means you've got to put something out, obviously within reason, and then the public gets to decide if it's valuable. So like if the content is trash, if people think, oh, dailypalantir.com is just FUD, or it's just this, or is that's pumping out, they're just not going to go to it. So like an analyst from Morgan Stanley, they're not supposed to put out a bad report. And if they do, there's a lot of confines in it. It's still within regulatory frameworks. For a little blog like you and I, if we put out a video and it sucks, people aren't going to watch another video. If I put out an article, it doesn't live up to the hype, people aren't going to read the articles anymore. So I think the beauty of like just being a blog outside of those regulatory mandates is that you've got free speech on your side within reason. Obviously, you can't be giving like financial advice. You can't be doing manipulation. And then the world gets to decide if this website is an authoritative source to give it the benefit of the free speech and the attention that they're coming to be able to use the website. So I think like truly the content will speak for itself at the end of the day. It's not going to be because a bunch of people on Twitter retweeted the site on day one. Traffic, as you know, dies immediately. So it's like you've got to keep it up consistently, which goes to the second point of like doing this for free and doing this with a busy life. I think, as you know, attention is the biggest asset in today's day and age. And with the whole Charlie arbitrage, Charlie has 140 million followers, puts out a drink. That attention is way on the upside for Dunkin' to the point where they have to go private because of, they have so many things going on there. So I think attention is at scale. Attention requires you sometimes to sleep 4 hours a night, wake up in the morning, write those 3 articles, get things going. Because if you can get that attention, I mean, that is a valuable resource. Gally from Hyperchange will always be known as one of the first people on social media in 2016 that was talking about what rights law was. And now he's investing in like 25 different startups a year as a 25-year-old because when he was 19, he was able to get the attention of people by not fluffing, putting out really valuable information. And that's the goal of this. We got to get the attention. We got to make sure people care about it. And if the company can execute and we can cover the company on its growth potential, then this could be a big thing over the next 5-6 years.
Yeah. Listen, I appreciate everything you just said. I love the way you capped that up at the end of the call. Apparently you have to pitch audio to me.
I just saw that comment. Omar, we might have talked for 3 hours last weekend, by the way.
There may be something there after all. We'll have to get back on that one. Maybe that's another conversation to have publicly. So I'll tell you what, first of all, I appreciate everyone jumping on. I know it's lunchtime. Everyone's super busy. I had no idea I'd be having you on here as a guest. So thank you for troubleshooting and tech shooting with me, by the way. And with that, guys, thanks for watching. Check out the site. Check out the Twitter handle. I'll put them in the description below once I get this pumped out. Thanks so much, everybody. Owen, you missed everything, but I'm not going to put this back to watch.
Owen, you missed everything. Sean, last question. What do you want for lunch?
I'm going right back on the road in about 15 minutes to go and grab a flight to Dallas. So there'll be no lunch today for me.
I want to be you. Like your life is like just so exciting to me. Getting a flight, going to do stuff. I love it. It's awesome.
When you're born handsome, life just comes at you. That's the way it goes. That's what I hear, anyways. Cool. Brother, really good to have you. Thanks so much for jumping on and congrats and good luck with everything, man.
I appreciate you so much, man. Talk to you later.
All right, brother. Bye. Bye, everybody.